Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Thursday at ProCon 2021 and to our enrichment elective, Building Resilience in Your Community Through Story, JFest Engagement Resources for your JCC. I'm Randy Lutterman. I'm Vice President of Development and Arts and Culture at JCC Association of North America. Joining me today is Isabel, my partner and colleague extraordinaire, Program Manager, Development and Arts and Culture. And our names are at the top of your participant list. Of course, you can reach out to us at any time if you have needs or questions. I want to point out the session is being recorded today, and we understand some people don't want to be recorded, in which case, please feel free to turn off your cameras. We encourage anyone who's comfortable doing so to stay visible so we can really feel like we're all here together as much as we can. We're joined by special guests, artist Helena Czernek and Aleksander Prugar of the incredible Polish Judaica company, POLIN. We're so happy to see you both again, and we look forward to your workshop in just a little while. Isabel?
We aspire for every person to feel that they belong at ProCon 2021. We are working to build inclusive spaces in which all people feel welcome, respected, safe, and fully included. To that end, we encourage you to consider the following suggestions as we begin our time together. We invite you to rename yourself in Zoom with your name, agency, and if you're comfortable, adding your preferred personal pronouns. We have enabled closed captioning, and you have the option to turn it off using the button on the bottom toolbar.
And slide. We're going to advance ourselves. Fantastic. So you may have already noticed in a lot of our rooms this year during professional conference, there have been a lot of conversations about the collaboration imperative. How do we work better together? How are we stronger when we're in partnership? And in what ways might we benefit from even greater sharing of programs and resources? So the other prevalent topic of conversation is, of course, our communities. How have they managed to stay together while apart? And what role, most importantly, might our JCCs play in service of our community's ongoing recovery and recentering? So this unprecedented year taught us a few things, and here's where we are and what we know. Our individual and family stories help us build resilience and create resilient communities. And art helps us to engage and tell these stories. So what's JFest? And how will it help you continue to make impact in your communities? JFest is a virtual Jewish arts festival that marries high quality cultural and educational content delivered continentally via virtual J platform with local engagement resources for you in your communities, which deepens local connections as helps build community resilience. Curated by JCC Association in collaboration with our funder, the Covenant Foundation, JFest will deliver virtual Jewish Arts Festival event clusters this year, broadly accessible to our JCCs, offering high quality talent and programs at no cost. So on April 7th, we launched JFest on the virtual J as part of JCC Association's Days of Memory series. And our program brought together 4 international artist educators who helped us set the table for this year-long discussion. You can learn more about our artist educators by watching the program, which is available on Virtual J, and possibly using that program as you continue to explore the resources we'll share after the conference wrapped around for JFest. Briefly, they're John Adam Ross, founding artist of the Inheritance Project, which is a nonprofit theater that navigates challenging civics conversations using inherited Jewish texts. Dr. Marshall Duke, professor of personality and psychopathology at Emory University, whose work on family narratives and strength building in many ways inspired the driving themes of JFest, storytelling and resilience. And we'll share a little bit more about his work shortly. And with us today, as I said, Helena and Aleksander, who together are POLIN, the first Polish Judaica arts company in existence since World War II. POLIN has been seeking out and preserving memories of what has been lost, making Judaism tangible one door frame at a time through their mezuzah project. Before Helena and Aleksander guide us through their JFest workshop, let me set the table with some words from Dr. Duke and his colleague, Dr. Fibish. They say, it is this intergenerational self and the personal strength and moral guidance that seem to derive from it that are associated with increased resilience, better adjustment, improved chances of good clinical and educational outcomes for families and for communities. What does Dr. Duke mean by intergenerational self? This is really the key. Dr. Duke is referring to the notion that through family stories, children develop a personal strength and moral guidance that provides them with greater resiliency. And this notion of intergenerational self and what we carry is historically embedded in the fabric of the Jewish narrative. And through JFest, we're exploring this in the context of storytelling and as part of the Jewish community resilience story. We're not the only people who are doing this. The notion of resilience in our communities has been front and center, of course, throughout the pandemic worldwide. And there are projects happening across North America in our JCCs that are engaging in this important work. This Passover, the JCC of San Francisco, in collaboration with one of our JFest artist educator partners, Citizen Films, retold the Passover story through modern day refugees and descendants in a show and tell of precious objects that they carry with them on their journey to freedom. Let's take a quick look at this short film connecting the artifact of history and memory. Isabel?
When I say I'm a daughter of survivors, it's often a really shorthand way of saying so much about who I am. How is it that we carry the aftermath of things that didn't happen to us? Experiences that occurred before we were born. How is it that we continue to feel impacted by those? And why? What do we do with what we carry?
Thank you. So the film is particularly resonant as we examine these narratives and these stories that we carry with us, which we'll continue to do throughout the year. So the question is, how can we use Dr. Duke's concept of intergenerational self in our communities to help foster and build resilience? An integral part of JFest is to pair continental programs with local engagement resources delivered by JCC Association to you, JCC professionals, because you have the deep relationships with your unique communities. So in our brief time together today, we're going to give you a taste of the kinds of resources you'll be able to bring back to your members and broader communities through JFest throughout the year. So Dr. Duke developed what he called the Do You Know scale, in which he suggests that these kids or people who know the answers to a certain 20 questions are more likely to have the strength and resilience necessary to work through challenges over the course of a lifetime. How could that be? So the intergenerational self is developed when stories are passed from one generation to the next. And he tells us that questions themselves are not really that important. The most important thing about the intergenerational self is that you could only have the answers to these questions if they had been told to you by somebody, a parent, a grandparent, meaning that the passage of narrative from one member to another in community is a critical piece. So let's see how you do. Isabel's going to throw just a few questions from the Do You Know scale into the chat, and we're going to ask you to respond to them and pop your answers in. And if you can tell us not just the answer to the question, but why. Do you know which person in the family you act most like? Do you know some of the jobs that your parents or grandparents had when they were young? Take a moment and see if you might pop something in the chat for us. I'm going to start us off. Any of your parents' jobs, your grandparents' jobs? Your great grandfather opened the first movie theater in Newport News in 1918. Fantastic. Isabel's Romanian grandfather was a shoemaker. Phyllis's grandfather owned a tavern in a shtetl in Russia. Rebecca sold original Snapple flavors. You're getting a sense here that there's a tapestry of narrative that is happening. And I think that that's essentially the beginning of the Dr. Duke 20 questions. How we share with our kids, how we share with our families. That's how this kind of resilience begins to be built. Thank you for sharing. You can continue to drop that in and we'll just capture them as we go. Make sure you share these stories with your kids. That's the other piece of it, is that once you inherit a story, it's yours. It's not just your story, it's your intergenerational story from your intergenerational self. And now it becomes your obligation. We're commanded to share it forward. And that's how we're going to build resilience in our communities. Fantastic. Isabel, we're looking forward to sharing other questions from Dr. Duke, of course, with other resources after the conference. Let's take a look.
There are some stories that take a lot of care and labor to find and repiece together. Lost stories, or almost lost until we go looking for what has been forgotten. We are absolutely thrilled to have Helena Czernek and Aleksander Prugar of POLIN with us today. The following clip was shown at our JFest launch and gives you a deeper look into their work making artifacts from the absence of artifact.
Thank you. Helena and Aleksander, thank you so much for this beautiful work. I'm so happy you're here with us. And I want to welcome you and invite you to tell us more about how this started, how we can use the concept of home to help us build resilience in our families and in our communities. Welcome. Aleksander, you must unmute yourself.
Okay. Hello, I'm Aleksander. Together with me is Helena, and yes, for last 7 years we are focused to method traces because method traces is kind of key to the past. And as an introduction of our main topic, I would like to explain what the mezuzah trace is. So the mezuzah trace is the place where original mezuzah used to be affixed to the doorpost. And because of the war, because of the years of communism in Poland, those original mezuzah that contain scroll of the mezuzah were removed. And we are tracing and researching for those traces. And by this, we put those traces into spotlight, because every mezuzah is a single family story about regular and private people, and about the lives and about the homes.
It's also about the emptiness and turning the emptiness into existence. So we find empty halls that remind about the stories from the past. So we try to turn it into something more tangible, something that will be kind of keyhole that we can look through and meet with our families. But we should maybe start with the thing, what mezuzahs are. Mezuzah is a piece of parchment that it's closed in a small container that you put on your door frame. Inside there is a parchment that it contains a piece of Torah, the book of Deuteronomy. But I don't know if you know why actually we put mezuzahs on the doorpost. It's a tradition. We know that many Jewish people do this, but actually why? It's not a blessing. It's not something that brings you luck, to your home. It's something much more. It's a commandment. This commandment you can actually find inside the mezuzah. In this piece of text of Torah, you will find words that you should put these words on your doorposts and on your gates. So it's literally taken from this part, Torah portion. Probably you know that mezuzah should be put not straight and not vertical and not horizontal, but with an angle. Aleksander, would you like to say why?
Yeah, this is a very practical history. And imagine that two ancient rabbis meet once, and they discuss how mezuzah needs to be affixed, like horizontal or vertical. And they were arguing for a very long time, but they were find a very practical solution. And right now we can describe the solution as a compromise, because if you compare horizontal and vertical position of the mezuzah, the compromising position is the angle position. So this discussion happened a very long time ago. So this tradition is keeping to nowadays.
There is also a commandment that you should touch mezuzah, that it should be on all of your doorposts at home, besides of the bathroom. So not only at the entrance. And we think that mezuzah is something very personal, something that belongs to families. It's not one for the community, but every family can put his mezuzahs at home. So also in our project, Mezuzah from this home, we understand mezuzah traces and mezuzahs as a proof of existence of just normal people. And now we would like to invite you to our workshops that are connected in some way to what we do, and in a way that is possible through the internet. we would like to invite you to create your own symbolic mezuzah, something that will be like a blessing for home, something that can be maybe a place for your family memories, something that you can hang on a wall. It won't be a religious mezuzah that you put on your door frame with kosher scroll, but something more individual, what you would like to create and share with your family. Maybe it can be kind of or way of feeling the emptiness that you feel that comes from your past. Maybe there are some family stories, some memories, some questions that you didn't find an answer for that you would like to share at your home. There is many family stories that should be told, and all of them are important. We prepared for you kind of template that can be maybe helpful for you in a shape of mezuzah. You can print it if you will get a file after the workshops, but you can also draw it by yourself. What you need is only a piece of paper and a kind of pen. If you have anything else like color pencils or anything what you have at home, you can use it and create kind of keyhole for your family story. You can also make something more general about home if you don't feel a need to speak exactly about your family, or maybe about something about your community, and then you can create it with your communities together. So here is the template, and around this shape of mezuzah, you can find some questions that can be maybe helpful for you to understand and to get creative, and it will maybe inspire you and be kind of direction how to think about this exercise. So the questions are, for example, what does mezuzah mean for you? For some people, mezuzah is a really religious object. They understand it as a commandment, as I said in the beginning. But for some, this is a symbol of identity. Many people who are not religious also put mezuzahs on their doorposts. You can think what makes you putting mezuzah on your doorpost. Aleksander?
Yeah, so this is the first question, and another question is, what does home means for you? So this question could be widely understood because for people in our age, it sounds completely different when we compare to the people who are older than us, and they are asking this question, I mean the same question to themselves. So in this question, we would like to learn more about sense of the home. What makes home the home?
Yeah, there is more questions. We will just maybe not explain everything so so exact, but because we want to leave some time for you to prepare your mezuzah, but we need to read it. What would you like for your home in the future? So just think about it. Aleksander.
Yes, and about second question, I would like to share some information, or I mean, just the information that here in Poland, we say that our home is where our language is. So it could be another way how to understand the second question. And the fourth question is, what about your family would like to share with your children or grandchildren? So this question is touching the intergeneration self. I mean, this idea of Marshall Duke to keep to keep family history alive. What is the most important thing to learn our children's, to let them to learn their children's in the future? Yes, so Helena, please.
Is there any gap in your family story that you would like to fill? Many families don't know too much about their stories. There is many gaps. There is many questions that are hard to answer. Very often it's because of Holocaust, because someone lost his family. Sometimes there are people with traumas who don't want to speak about their past. Here in Poland, from time to time, we meet people who, being adults, suddenly discover they are Jewish because no one told them, no one wanted to speak to them. So there are many gaps and holes that we would like to fill. Maybe there is something that it's also kind of hidden in your family.
Yes, and the last question, are there any questions that you didn't find an answer for? So Isabel wrote a post or a question that unanswered question is a part of our history as well. So I think this is important as well, that unanswered questions are also part of our family story and our way to that still waiting to discover,
and also build our identities.
Yes.
So these are some of questions that we prepared for you. It's not that you need to answer all of them. It's just kind of help that maybe you can think about it during your work. When you will be preparing workshops in your communities, you can, of course, change these questions. Can be changed for workshops for children or for teenagers. Maybe you can think about it in some kind of different way. So we encourage you to take a piece of paper and pen or pencil and start to work soon on your mezuzah. But in the meantime, I would like to show you some of the examples how it can look like. But I need to highlight that it's not the correct way of answer. I mean, there is no one way how to do this. I am more the person who thinks in visual and art way, and I am not good in writing, so I don't, for example, write my diary. I draw my diary from time to time, but you can use just words. Maybe you can use some poems. Maybe you can use family pictures that you would like to stick to your mezuzah, or some pieces of fabric. Maybe there is some souvenir or something that is important for you, and you would like to share it with your family, with your children, with your parents. It's just up to you. If I could ask you, Isabel, to turn off the presentation. Okay, so here is my symbolic mezuzah. I was thinking a lot how to create it. I thought about my family past, but then I decided to think about my family future. In 1 month, I will have a son, my first child. So I dedicated my mezuzah for him. I come from mixed family, and he will also come from mixed family. So for me, it's important to pass him this tradition and some kind of identity. So that's why I put the first words of mezuzah Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. That means, hear Israel, the Lord, our God, the Lord is one. And I wanted him to like it. He will be a kid, so I put a tree. Maybe one day he will realize that it's in the shape of menorah. I think I won't tell him. I put here a sun and the moon, because in the mezuzah it's said that you should remember these words, and like every time of the day when you wake up, when you go to sleep. So maybe he will discover it slowly and in some time. So this is my message. I think Isabel also has something to share.
Isabel, do you want to share your mezuzah?
Sure. So I am not so much a visual artist. I'll put myself on spotlight just temporarily. I was telling Helena earlier that I like words. I'm a singer. If I could make a musical mezuzah, I would. This is what I have drawn. And there are many, many words inside of it and around it. And so around the frame are names of my ancestors and nuclear family members, people both who have passed and who are still with me, because without them, I would have no story. And inside are some words and some poorly drawn images of what I consider to be central to home, such as safety, creativity, children's laughter, music, stories around the fire, healing past wounds, joy. And then at the top and bottom of the mezuzah, to try to add to the form, I put hope at the top and story at the bottom, because I think that's what holds the mezuzah for me. Thank
Wonderful.
you.
That's beautiful.
We do not expect that you will have your symbolic mezuzahs finished during these workshops, but at least we would like to start thinking about what you would like to create. Maybe you will write something, maybe you will draw something, maybe you will come up with some ideas that you would like to share with us. So I think it's a right moment to take your pen, pencil, or whatever you have. Maybe you have color paints, I don't know, and create anything what you would like to put at your home that you connect with mezuzah, or you would like to include in your symbolic mezuzah.
So I want to just say, I think this is, as you correctly say, Helena, it's unlikely that the rest of us will have finished things to show. And there are two things I'm thinking that I just want to point out. One is that there is, if there's anyone here who would like to share something they've built in real time, you could put it in the chat that you would love to share, and Isabel will allow you to do that. And we're happy to see what you're in the middle of building. But I also want to say, just to talk about this sort of larger scale conversation, which is about how you can use these resources with your, not just your immediate families, but in your JCC, with your JCC families, that there's any number of ways these projects can be integrated. And we'll certainly share more about that when we share resources afterwards. But imagine also that just like you tell a story with your audience in mind, and Helena so beautifully said she wants her soon-to-be kid to be excited by the images on the mezuzah. So she crafted something whimsical, and there are branches and there are birds. You know, we choose the language we communicate with based on the person we're communicating with, obviously. So think about it, if you will, a pre-kindergarten class or a first grade class or a class with cubbies, when we're thankfully back in our cubbies, where you can create a collage project about mezuzah and families of home, themes of home, and themes of shelter with a class, and how teachers and assistant teachers can shepherd a conversation with a class, and a class can build these things. And when children are done, you know, pasting and learning, and there's so many sort of fine motor, large motor possibilities there for kids as the developmental piece of this project evolves. And imagine walking into a JCC nursery school and seeing that every child has a personal mezuzah over the doorway of their cubby. I mean, that's an example for just for one small slice of the kinds of extrapolating that we're hoping to encourage you to do throughout the year. And the idea really is for us to, through JFest, a few times a year, share some broad, engaging programs on this virtual platform. And then prior to that share, frankly, having some sort of a peer cohort call or an open call to professionals where we go through this kind of exercise, and we share in advance the kind of wraparound and local engagement pieces that can be used to scaffold this big experience, because hybrid is not going away. So what we know is we want to give you the kinds of experiences digitally that will allow for the biggest sort of broadest access in your communities to some quality excellence in arts and culture. And as we continue to come back into our communities, we want you to be able to really lean in, and in the way that you know best, in the language you know how to speak with your communities, have the local engagement piece and really move the conversation forward and help lift everybody up and keep moving them forward, because that's what we do in our JCC communities. So that wasn't just a vamp. It was actually important to me that we think sort of broader. There can be a you know, for an after school program, if you're going to use Marshall's 20 questions, or at any age, there can be a wall of answers. Where do we come from? Where all the various different secrets that we are sharing about who we look like and what our families are like. And you'll see when you take a look at this 20 questions, there are a lot of opportunities there to shape program in a way that is particular to your community and exciting to your community and engaging to your community. Is there anyone in the house who has a mezuzah they want to bravely share with us or anything? I'm happy to do that. And we're also happy to take questions, of course, and we can do that in the chat and elevate them as well. Randy Zucker's got her hand in the air. Isabel, do you want to unmute Randy? Randy, do you want to share something?
Yes.
Yay. Let's spotlight Randy.
Oh.
I just realized I have no idea what I'm asking you to do, Isabel. So
That's okay. This is what I drew. It says Lador Vajor.
I don't see Randy. Am I missing her? Oh, there she is. Oh, so nice.
It's Lador Vajor because of this theme of storytelling from generation to generation. I love that it's would be right at the door as a reminder when you're walking in and when you're leaving. And there's a lotus flower on it to symbolize what beautiful things can become, no matter what the past was like, or what muck has happened in the past. Beauty can still bloom.
Very nice. Thank you for sharing that. Is there anyone else who wants to share their mezuzah in process? If so, please unmute yourself. We'll find you.
I'm happy to share. Randy, that was beautiful. So
who's talking?
Sorry, hey, it's Kimberly.
Hi.
Kimberly Gordon. Okay, Kimberly, you have to identify yourself.
Hello.
There we go.
Believe it. Anyway,
Kimberly, do you want to share with everybody how Aleksander knows you and is shouting your name joyfully?
Was it 2015? It's been a long time. It's like 6 or 7
Yes, quite a long time.
It was Shana Penn, right? It was Toby that introduced you to us, and we were able to have their exhibit and tell the story, and have them here. And I was hoping, we were planning our very, very first trip to Poland from the PJCC, and we were hoping to go this June. And you were, of course, like high on my agenda, like this high on my priority list of who we would see. And that has been postponed. But so it's such a treat to see you here before I get to see you there. But this has been wonderful. So Randy, and I was actually still inspired. I think I was in the mindset of your first question that launched us onto that. And I had written in the chat that my great grandfather owned a movie theater, but my grandfather also owned like a second run dollar movie theater that people would go to.
So
But
great.
I love that it was called The Village. And so my whole idea about everything is like, so this is the marquee of the Village, and that's what it looked like. It was this big marquee. But the idea of village and community reminds me of like the work that you do, and also like why I do the work I do. The idea that everybody gets to provide something to the community, and that in this field that we get to do arts is like an extra huge honor in the way I see my life and what I want. But the idea that everybody provides something, and that's how you build a community, is something that I really want to teach my family and impart to them. And the way my parents did that was like a lot with books. My mom was a kindergarten teacher, and Kitty Lit was huge for her. So I have like the ABCs. I know you can't really see this, and it's chicken.
No, it's great. It's
But
great.
also
Keep telling us. Keep telling us.
So we have like the wine glass, just have a glass of wine with it, in the ritual that means, and that this is a horrible dining room table, but the idea that like the kitchen table, the small kitchen table, that's where the homework got done, that's where everything, that's where the stories were told, that's where the meals were had, that was like the center of the house. If like friends came over to study or play, that was kind of the heart of the house. And then just raised with lots of love. And then the meal dish that is our favorite is the kugel, which was also came up in the JCCA talk yesterday. So
That's great.
and lots and lots of people, because to have people around and family and friends. So I think that's kind of, yeah, I put a stage there because, you know, theater, but yeah, and just other symbols. So that's mine.
That is awesome. Totally awesome. Thank you for sharing that, and for sharing your story about Me Poland coming to your community, which, you know, we're dreaming about traveling, we're dreaming about being together. But I have to say, there is something so incredible about being able to connect this way. That has been sort of my surprise of the week. You know, as Isabel and I and our team at JCC Association were building the conference, we had this idea that we were just sort of going to give it to people. But what I didn't realize is how much give and take this would be, and how wonderful it is to really be in community with you. And you're right, Kimberly, it takes a village, I guess, is that old phrase. And I love that the movie theater was called The Village. That is just prescient and fantastic. I love it. Anybody else? Oh, someone's asking where PJCC is. Foster City, California, Northern Cal. Anyone else want to share Mezuzah? It's hard. She's a hard act to follow. I don't disagree.
Or maybe just an idea or some thoughts, or the question that was the most helpful for you, and you would like to continue. It doesn't have to be something drawn already, but maybe a general idea.
We're also happy to take general questions about Me Poland and their Mezuzah project and their process, if anybody has those. Isabel and I are happy to answer questions about JFest and that process as much as we can. We're happy to answer. And certainly,
I would love to know in this project that you've done. First of all, it's amazing, and the Mezuzah tracing, it makes me want to go and trace my roots, go back and take my kids and bring them to those buildings if they still exist from my great whatever. I would love to know if you brought this, I understand you brought this program to PJCC, and I would like to know where else you brought this program and how else you used it in other, with which audiences, because I immediately think about doing it with teens, doing it with young adults, kind of like an identity program, and maybe, you know, doing it with seniors as compiling their experience and their memories for future generations. Is there any other specific usage that you've done with this program? Anything that kind of sparked some other project?
I'm not sure if I understood the question.
let me ask Luba, are you asking Helena and Alexander where else they've done this kind of workshop?
Yes, and what other angle maybe other JCCs or other organizations?
Well, I'm actually gonna jump in here, and I'm happy to have Helena answer, but I'm also gonna request that we think together and throw in the chat any other ideas that this is provoking, because the reality is, part of why we have Me Poland here today is because you're correct, Luba. We can think about it with teens. We can think about it with older adults. There's the point of the JFest initiative, and the reason the theme is storytelling and resilience is we want to invite our communities to think at every demographic within every community how they can use these resources. So if anybody has any ideas please feel free to throw them in the chat, and we're going to continue to share those as we go. But Helen, I'd love for you to share how your, maybe it's not so much this workshop, but other workshops you've done.
Mm-hmm. And so we had a few workshops or visits to JCCs in the North America. We were in Foster City, and there was an exhibition of our things, our designs. Not only this one project, but also we do contemporary Judaica in general. We were also in San Rafael. Aleksander, can you remind me the name of this JCC?
It's the Osher Marin JCC.
Yes, Osher Marin JCC, right. Thank you very much. Where we also had an exhibition, but for example, in Toronto, besides of the exhibition, we had many workshops, I think 4 times. It was before pandemic, so it was like personal, with children, but also with adults. Also about mezuzot, but people crafted their own mezuzot that they could put on their doorposts. So it wasn't like symbolic mezuzah, but real mezuzah. And it was, the main topic was diasporas and how different Judaism can be. And during our work, we realized that there is no something like one Jewish style, for example, that Jewish objects, Jewish architecture in the different countries around the world are very, very different because of the influence of local traditions. And very interesting for us was when we asked, for example, children, if they know where their families come from, and then we heard like about the whole world. It was something very new for us because in Poland, everyone is from Poland. There are no people from other diasporas. So it was also something very refreshing for us because we didn't only spoke about it, but people had this at their homes, these differences. So these kind of workshops were done in the North America. Here in Poland, we had much more during the Jewish culture festivals, like in Krakow, for example. This is the most famous Jewish culture festival in Poland. We had a workshop, for example, about posters inspired by traditional, let's say, posters from Mea Shearim. I don't know if you know, they're like mostly typography and very important for them informations. And so it was as an inspiration, and people did whatever they wanted to share in this style. Or there was a workshop about holiness and how to create something that have this that illustrates holiness. We had some workshops outside, like searching for some details that create a Jewish neighborhood. We prepared for participants kind of frames, like from Polaroid pictures from the past. People got this kind of paper frames that they could stick to walls of the Jewish neighborhood to highlight the like very normal things that people usually don't pay any attention to. So it depends. Yeah,
that's so interesting. Helena, you said something earlier about a workshop on holiness, and can you talk a little bit about that for a minute?
Yeah, well, I think it was years ago, so I need to recall.
No, that's okay. Just generally though, was it a visual artist workshop?
Yeah, visual, yeah. We spoke also about the symbol of gold color, that it's very often connected to, I mean, if something is holy or important for some religion or community, very often they use the gold colors. So we were
Right.
also speaking like why it's like this.
It's interesting. I think that for the purposes of our JCCs, this notion of holiness and artifact is also very interesting. A little bit like the short film we watched with the suitcase that the artist talked about, the things we carry with us. That's the suitcase that has come through generations and generations, that, you know, objects are made holy when they're imbued with history and meaning and value. And I've said this before, you know, in my house, we have an old horn that came from somebody's bike. It's like one of those, you know, auga horns. It looks like a cartoon. And in my family, that is a holy object because it's part of a history of a family story. And when people come in my house and they see this like battered horn displayed, it's the beginning of a conversation. And we may look a little bit crazy, but for the Lutterman family, that horn means something very, very special. It is for us a holy object, you know. I think it's interesting to ask your community members to identify artifacts that carry meaning and to share the story around that meaning. And that's another opportunity to do an engaged piece of local programming. So the notion of holy, the notion of home, the notion of giving value to a story, etc. Thank you, guys. Anyone, just before we continue to move through, because I want to end on time today, I know that there are people who have trusted advising sessions, and there's a vendor hall, and there's our final close, and I want to really make sure that we give everyone enough time, and Isabel and I have a few things to share with you at the end. But is there anyone else who has a mezuzah they want to share with us? If so, can you let Isabel know? Dina's asking a question, which I'm going to elevate, and then I'm going to keep us moving forward, which is Dina from Maine is asking if you could share a little more about whether the current residents of Polish and Ukrainian homes were receptive to the research and to creating the molds from the door frames. I'm wondering if you could speak to that for a moment.
Mm-hmm. So you are asking about the reaction of the residents, current residents, right? Okay, so first thing is that because we never know what will be the reaction, we try to be not very visible, because it can happen that someone will just say like, no, I don't let you do this. And for us, every mezuzah trace is very important to rescue in some way. This is the first thing that it's not that we knock the door and ask and everything. Usually we enter tenements where like usually everyone can enter. Sometimes it happens that we meet people who ask what we do, and usually they are okay. Sometimes they are helpful. It happened to us that we are really afraid, oh, someone will be angry at us, that there are strangers doing something on the doorpost. Maybe they want to rob us, or I don't know. But then it happened that this person started to speak about the history of the building, and that she knew about another mezuzah trace. So usually it's very surprising. We didn't have to almost any bad stories, but we are also afraid because there is this problem with the Jewish property. This is a big problem, that people are afraid that there will be some Jews coming from abroad to get back their home. Right. So this is, I think this is the thing why we are trying to be invisible too. But actually the reactions are much better than we would expect.
Thank you for that. I'm going to say that there's more information about the mezuzah project on the POLIN website, and we will share information again post resource post-conference, we'll share resources with you so that you can also continue to have that conversation. And I'm going to wrap us out and let you know that I am again so delighted, Helena and Aleksander, that you joined us and that we know each other and that we're on this JFest journey together. Thank you so much for your beautiful work, and also really for inviting us to think about the ways we can open up the windows to our family stories and help us hold on to memories, help us create new memories, as you showed us with your mezuzah as well. And thank you everybody for joining us today. I know there were a lot of choices and we're on day 3 and we're on fumes, and this was so meaningful to have this time together and to create this time together and to think together about the ways family and community narrative can build resilience in your communities. And that's truly what the JFest initiative is about. We're really working on this integration of a delivery of arts and culture content that really only comes alive when you take the next step and you integrate local engagement pieces, and we'll help you do that. So as we continue our conversations today and tomorrow about JFest and about the hybridity of futures in our communities, and as we continue to communicate with you over the course of the year, we hope that many of you will opt in and be our creative partners. Amy, you asked a question about our schedule. At this point, it looks like events are going to happen mid-fall and late fall, sort of towards the end of the calendar year, and then again in the spring of 2022. We'll share a calendar in the next month or so, and it's our intention to, prior to those cluster events, to have a session somewhat like this, in which we will review the events that are about to be programmed on a continental level and share together the resources that have been developed, and in partnership with our communities, develop those so that they can be more broadly engaged on a local level. And so we're looking forward to that, but really we couldn't do it without our brilliant artist educator partners. So again, a big thank you for Helena and Aleksander and their work with POLIN. And as you know, this conference, happily, we were able to host it at no cost to our JCCs. And so we're going to say once again to remember that there is a virtual vendor hall happening. If you haven't popped in there, there are lots of people there who can have conversations with you about the way you do your work. And we hope you'll take some time to say hello to everybody. And on behalf of Isabel and everyone, really, I just want to say thank you. I want to invite you to join us at 3 o'clock Eastern time for the closing movement moment of ProCon 2021. We wouldn't want you to miss that. We want to be together, and we really want to close out this amazing and remarkable week in community with you. It's important. So I hope you'll join us, and really, thank you. Thank you. Thanks everyone for joining today. See you soon.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
And
Thank you, POLIN.
last thing, that if you will have any workshops inspired by this meeting anytime in the future, you are more than welcome to share with us the effects, and we will be happy to see what was it and what you did.
That's so nice. I love that. I love that. And needless to say, we want to see it too. And maybe there's a large continental exhibit in our future. We'll see how we do. Thank you so much for helping us tell our stories. Thanks, everybody.